Are you so exhausted with just trying to stay alive? I know when I personally took prednisone, the whole process of just staying alive, taking care of my health was exhausting. I want to read a comment from YouTube. She said, "There are so many differing opinions that people can't know what is correct and what is incorrect. Life becomes so tiring. Trying to stay alive has become so exhausting and destructive to any possibility of life satisfaction. I have heard so many advise against ever taking calcium. I've also heard many advise against ever taking melatonin. So exhausted with all of it." So this person is feeling overwhelmed with the battering of information, that there's so much information out there, and that there's this person saying do this, and that's person saying don't do this and that, and there's so much conflicting information that just staying alive is a thing, but then trying to get out of that just survival trap is exhausting itself. I personally had to take prednisone, and it was horrid. I felt like it was a part-time job, figuring out what dose I was taking, and then the reason I was taking it was for an autoimmune condition, and I had to get my blood tested at least once a week, sometimes twice a week, and then going to the doctor's appointments to follow up, and then getting the phone calls when they'd say, okay, you need to change your dose to this. It was exhausting just keeping track of all of that information just for that one disease. But a lot of people with prednisone have more than one disease and more than that to deal with. And it is exhausting. And then the prednisone side effects, they're horrible. There's more side effects to prednisone than to any other drug. And they are life-changing. As this person said, destructive to any possibility to any life satisfaction. Prednisone decreases your quality of life dramatically. I completely felt that when I was taking prednisone. It really is a horrible experience. Some people only have one or two side effects, but other people like me have tons of side effects. Check out all of the side effects I personally experienced. So I wanted to talk about the specific questions this person had that led them to throw their arms up and say, oh, I can't figure this out. So first, let's talk about calcium. So it says, I've heard so many advise against ever taking calcium. Well, that might be true for the general population to never take calcium alone. Calcium alone, they've done studies that have shown calcium alone increases your risk for heart disease, for calcification of your arteries. And that is legitimate and true. However, that is not true for people on prednisone. Well, calcium alone is never a good idea, and they did studies for people taking prednisone, and calcium alone was not a good idea either, okay? So there is truth to what this person is saying, that there are some who advise against ever taking calcium. Right, calcium alone is always a bad idea. You need to give other stuff with it, or the calcium goes into your mouth, into your gut, and goes straight into your blood and is taken in and hardens your arteries. They can even check for it in an ultrasound of your carotid artery, okay? So calcium alone is a bad idea. But the doctors who prescribe prednisone the most, they're called rheumatologists, they came out with a guideline, and it's glucocorticoid-induced osteoporosis. And in it, they specifically recommend that everyone who's taking prednisone over 2.5 milligrams a day should be taking calcium and vitamin D. That's the key here, is that you do not take calcium alone, you take calcium and vitamin D. They must be taken together because the vitamin D is vital to help your body absorb the calcium from the gut, to put the calcium where it's supposed to go. But they're missing something. There's more to it than just that. We also need vitamin K2. It's a vital hormone that signals to your body where to put the calcium. So you need calcium, vitamin D, and vitamin K2, but you also need magnesium. And if you don't have the right balance of calcium and magnesium, then you have a big problem. So if you're only taking calcium and vitamin D, but you're not also taking magnesium, then you'll get them out of balance, and it's not good. It's not going to help your bones or your muscles or any of the 300 chemical reactions that magnesium is a part of. You need them in the correct balance. And the reason that you need the calcium, vitamin D, vitamin K2, and magnesium is because prednisone is stealing from your bones. It is causing you to lose calcium from your bones and causes bone loss. Prednisone is the number one drug that causes osteoporosis. And so you've got to be giving those back, according to these doctors who prescribe prednisone the most. Or you might have osteoporosis. What's so bad about that? Well, osteoporosis can lead to compression of your spine, so you get shorter. It can cause more likely to break bones like your wrist. Or the worst case scenario, in my opinion, is when your hips are involved. Because statistics show that when somebody breaks their hip, their risk of death goes up dramatically. That people are not likely to survive long term with a broken hip. That you break the hip, you have to have hip surgery, you have to be in a rehab for a long time, you can't move your body, and you might get pneumonia because you can't sit up very well, and so you're eating food lying down and you're not very able to swallow it very well, and you aspirate, or you put food down your lungs and you get pneumonia and you die. And nobody wants that. Nobody wants that kind of a death. That long, drawn out, miserable, painful death. Then the person asked about melatonin. I've heard many advise against ever taking melatonin. And melatonin, if you're not aware of what it is your vampire hormone. It is part of your circadian rhythm that helps your body know when to go to sleep. In the morning, your body naturally releases cortisol, which is what prednisone is mimicking. And then at bedtime, your body naturally releases melatonin to help you feel drowsy and fall asleep. The problem is when you are taking prednisone, I told you it's mimicking cortisol. And cortisol and melatonin are like calcium and magnesium. They have to stay in balance. Or when one's thrown off, everything's thrown off. So when you take even just one dose of melatonin, it sends your circadian rhythm off the charts. You're suddenly in a perpetual daylight. Your melatonin is dramatically decreased. So your cortisol's way off the charts and your melatonin can't compensate for the dramatic amount of cortisol that has thrown off your delicate balance of the circadian rhythm. And so when you are taking prednisone, it's totally different than other people who might be taking melatonin for sleeping. Because I don't know what's causing their insomnia or lack of sleep, but when you're taking prednisone, you have a biochemical reason to take the melatonin. It's not just candy to you. You're giving back what prednisone is throwing off. Prednisone's throwing off this whole rhythm, and you've got to give back the melatonin to put this rhythm back into the right balance so that you can get sleep at night. They did a study, and one dose of dexamethasone, which is prednisone's sister drug, in healthy young men who'd never taken any form of prednisone or steroid in their life. One dose was enough to not only throw off their entire circadian rhythm, but also more than half of the metabolites that they measured. So their metabolism was completely thrown off. One dose. And so while that advice that this person's heard against ever taking calcium or ever taking melatonin may be true for the general population, it's not true if you're taking prednisone. Your body needs both calcium, magnesium, vitamin K2, and vitamin D, and melatonin so you can get restful sleep at night, so you can prevent bone loss. You absolutely need these things to counteract the nutrient depletion, the loss of these vital messengers in your body. You need them. And you might be overwhelmed with the amount of things you need and what dose and when to take it. And that's exactly why I created Nutranize Zone. I personally had to take prednisone, and I felt overwhelmed with the amount of side effects I was suffering. And so I invented Nutranize Zone. It's got a bedtime and a morning bottle, and you just take 2 in the morning with your prednisone dose and 2 at bedtime. And it gives back those nutrients in the exact ratio that you need them when you need them, so that you can support your bones, you can support your sleeping, you can support your metabolism. It's replenishing the nutrients that prednisone is stealing from your body. People who take Nutranize Zone talk about how much more imbalanced they feel, how they feel like themselves again. That instead of, if that plant behind me was yellow and wilting, that's how we feel on prednisone, because it's stealing from our bodies. But if you give that plant some fertilizer and water, it'll perk back up again and be green and happy. And that's how you're going to feel whole and complete and in balance, because you're giving back your body exactly what you need, what prednisone has been stealing. So you can just go find Nutranize at either Nutranize.com or Amazon if you're in the United States. And it will give back what prednisone has been stealing so you can feel like yourself again. Signing off as Dr. Megan, your prednisone pharmacist.